All right, we're going to talk about how to use a burette. This lovely thing right here is a burette. Burette is probably one of the more confusing things to use because for some odd reason, not really that odd, the 0 is at the top and the 50 is at the bottom. So don't overthink it. Make sure you know where the volume is and just write down where the volume is. Don't subtract from 50 or anything crazy like that when you're using them. Typically they are either stored with water in them, distilled water in them, or maybe flipped upside down. We do that because this tip at the bottom is very, very narrow. We want to keep any dust particles out of it so it will run smoothly. We also want to try to keep that seal. So in order to use it, we have to dump the water out. We conveniently have drains right next door to our station, so you can dump it out in those drains. And you'll need to actually rinse this out with the solution you're using. Now there was already water in here, so anything that you add to the burette at this point is contaminated with water. So we want to force that water out. The way we do that is we actually rinse it. So stick a funnel in the top so it makes it easier to pour, and just put a little bit in there. Now make sure the stop clock is closed. This means closed. This means open. See how it's dripping? Closed. Open. Good. Okay, close it. All right, we'll put a little bit in there. We don't need a lot, just a tiny bit. So a splash, plenty. That's actually probably twice as much as what you need. Okay, so there's plenty in there. Then what we do is we tilt it down so that it runs along the entire length of the burette. Now, I don't know if you can see the blue solution going all the way up, but it's not quite to my finger. Oh, there it went to my finger, and I'm going to tilt it back around. Now, if this is something horribly hazardous, I don't want to put it on my finger. I would want to put it over my waste container. Let me grab my waste container here. Put it over my waste container, so that way if it does dribble out, it goes into the waste container and not onto my finger or onto the counter or someplace that I need to clear. I need to kind of tilt it back and forth repeatedly so that it will touch all of the surfaces on the inside. That's where my solution will be.
Right.
Now, there is still water in here, so I need to also rinse that out. So I'm going to open this up and let it drain through the tip. Now, you'll be able to tell right away if there's anything blocking it. If there is, you can kind of flick it a little bit or flag me down and I'll flick it for you. Worst case scenario, I'll use water pressure and force it open. But we'll get it fixed for you, or we can just grab another one. All right, once it drains through, we're gonna close the stopcock again, and then we're gonna repeat that cleaning procedure 2 more times. So you'll have rinsed it a total of 3 times. Most of the time in chemistry, 3 is the magic number. Do it 3 times and everything is good. Do it 1 time and I get angry. Do it 2 times and you're halfway there. Get to 3. All right, so we're gonna pretend that we've already done it 2 more times, and we're gonna actually fill up the burette. When you fill up the burette, again, make sure you use the funnel here because it's way easier to pour into a funnel, and you're gonna pour in your solution. Now, I would recommend pouring it in front of you. Sorry, the camera's dancing all over the place. Make sure, again, the stop clock is closed, otherwise you're gonna have a giant puddle on the floor. Now notice, I still have some in here before it fills all the way up here, so don't be overzealous when it comes to filling this because you could have a problem. Now, another thing that can happen is you can actually have a seal form right here. So if you push it off to the side a little bit like this, it will let the air out, but the problem is you may not be able to see behind your hand. So just kind of keep that in mind. Fill it up above the 0 mark, something like so, and take out your funnel, okay? Now it is above the 0 mark, so we can't use it yet, but we still got some stuff in here. There's probably an air bubble. I don't know if you can see the air bubble in there. We want to let the air bubble out and fill it with our solution. So we're going to open it up, let it drain down till we get below the 0 mark. You can be right at the 0 mark and then that's fine. If we're right at the 0 mark, it just needs to be somewhere in these markings. That's when we can use it. Now the burette is actually ready to use. At this point, you would want to take a beaker that has already been weighed. It makes it a lot easier if it's already been weighed. Put it underneath here, pull out the volume that you need. Make sure though that you read the volume off the burette before you take anything out because you need to know the initial reading. Let it drain down to whatever volume you need and then read off the burette again where your final volume is. At that point, you've actually used your burette. Make sure you look at how many decimal places you should use. Look at the markings on the side. Each of the lines on here is 1/10 of a milliliter. So that means you should have 2 decimal places on this. If you don't, I will write angry words all over your paper in red ink. So
will Dr. G.
Yes, Dr. G will do the same thing. So make sure, I don't want to do angry words. Got it? All right, so that's how you use a burette. When you are finished with a burette, after you've pulled out, say you want to pull out, I don't know, 20 milliliters or so, you can open up the stopcock, let it run. If you don't get it exactly at 20 milliliters or whatever volume you need, it's not a big deal as long as you know where you have stopped. So if it's not exactly 20, that's fine. Read what it says, because it will actually all come out at the end. So if I stop it, we'll say, right now, I'm actually between 20 and 21, so I would have 20 point something something. Whatever I would read off of the burette, okay? That would be my sample. When I'm finished, I'm gonna let it all drain out into my waste container, and I'm gonna repeat that same cleaning procedure I did, this time with distilled water, because I want to replace the chemical that I have put in there with distilled water instead. Depending on how you store it, you may need to refill with distilled water to leave it sit, or flip it over with the valve open. But that's how we use the burette. Make sure you read it appropriately. Make sure you're always using it when it's between the marks. If it drops below the mark here, angry words will happen. Red ink all over your paper. Don't make me do it. All right, so there is the burette.